Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and we finally have this figure. This is the one dragon that I've been wanting that has been eluding me. It did not show up at Target at all. I had seen some people, including my buddy Jurassic KM, finding this at Walmart in Canada, but here in the United States, at least in my area, there were no dragon figures surfacing until just a few days ago when they finally did, and this one had shown up. So really happy to have the Hideous ZIPPLEBACK as well as Rough Nut and Tough Nut here to take a look at with you guys. The packaging is pretty much as it has been the entire time. Not really anything different going on as far as that goes. It is cool though that we actually have two humans for this set. But here on the back you can see a nice little shot here of the figures, and of course a shot over here, quite a few shots of some of the other figures here in the line. I think we've reviewed, yes, all of these. We have reviewed all of them on the channel. So let's pop this box open and check it out. So here is everything, again, included in the set, standing here before us, looking pretty cool. I will say that I'm not entirely sold, honestly, on the dragon here in person, but we'll get to that here in just a little bit. I think it looks really cool, but there are definitely some things that I'm not a huge fan of about it. But we'll actually begin with the human figures. So first of all, we've got Tough Nut, and you can see Tough Nut looks pretty decent, especially when it comes to the likeness looking like it does in the new film. From what I've seen so far, I think they did a good job, but one thing they did not do a good job on is the placement of the eyes, which we can see makes it look like there is a severe issue occurring to the left of Tough Nut, because the eyes are absolutely focused over in that direction, and I don't think that's meant to be that way, but it looks honestly like it kind of is. But I would chalk that up to kind of just some sloppiness on the part of the figure. But outside of that, everything looks really, really good overall. The hair is very nicely sculpted. You've got a really cool helmet, and just like before, the helmet has a nice kind of like metallic look to it, so they definitely did a great job on that. Moving through, there's like chains and stuff around the neck. The clothing looks really good, really high quality. A lot of paintwork to these figures, just like we've seen the entire way through. The shirt, again, is painted with a nice light brown. There's all sorts of creases and wrinkles and everything. There's some browns and stuff that have been added throughout the course of the outfit as well, which looks really good. On top of that, there's also a jacket here that is, again, very impressive when it comes to the actual texturing and everything. Like, it looks really, really good. The hair, look at how good the hair looks as well. Lots of waviness and, again, lots of realism to the hair of the figure. And then moving down, the pants are sculpted out pretty nicely, painted with a grayish sort of a tone, and then you can see the boots are quite interesting, painted with a brown. So again, lots of paint application, lots of variation to this figure overall. As far as the articulation goes, I will say one thing about this figure that I noticed instantly when I pulled it out, but we do have some nice articulation in the neck, which can go left and right, can also go up and down a little bit. The arms can go up away from the body and go forward, of course, which work pretty nicely. Here is where our problems begin, because there's something wrong with the right leg. As soon as I try to move it, it pops off instantly. Now, I have had the leg of another one of the figures pop off, but I put it back on. It wasn't really an issue, but this one does not seem to want to stay on. Like, it just comes off so easily, and I just keep having to go back in here and then pushing it back on. But the second I try to move it, it pops back off again, which is very unfortunate. You can see you do have articulation basically in the legs, which can go out away from the body, forward and back, and you also have a joint in the knee, which is super stiff, so I'm not going to force it, but obviously we have knee articulation, which can as well swivel, but this leg you just can't do anything with, because the second you try, it pops right off. And then we've got Rough Nut as well, and you can see, again, she looks pretty good sculpt-wise, you know, definitely looking fairly similar to the way she looks on screen from what we've seen, but just like with Tough Nut, we do have some paint mishaps here, especially when it comes to the lips. You can see they are misplaced, sadly, for the figure. The eyes look better, but the lips are misplaced. So definitely some quality control issues in the line when it comes to the humans. The dragons I haven't really noticed a whole lot as far as that going on, but the humans have definitely had their fair share of issues. We can see, again, a nice glossy helmet, nice metallic sort of helmet up here. The hair as well, again, sculpted beautifully, painted with a nice reddish tone. We can, of course, see that the fine detail overall looks really good. Again, a jacket, this time with a purplish tone to it, but the texturing is honestly fantastic. A nice light brown for her shirt. You can see all of the wrinkles and everything as you move through the shirt and everything up through the sleeves. Again, you've got, rather than the light brown that we have on the other one, you've got more of like a black for all of the extras moving through, including the boots, which we can see look pretty reminiscent to the boots on the first figure. And then again, a darker grayish, almost like a darker grayish blue for the pants. So a little bit of difference as far as the coloration goes, but same style of an outfit, I guess you could say. But again, also really well done. Very impressive as far as the sculpt goes. These are some of the nicest sculpted and honestly painted human figures that I have seen in any toy line in a very long time. Same articulation, of course. You can turn the head left and right. You know, a little wiggle room forward and back, but not a whole lot. The arms can go up and, of course, swivel, so you can get some nice posability in the arms. And the legs do go forward and back. And you can obviously see that the knee is working way nicer here than it was on the first figure. And again, the legs can also come out away from the body. And I didn't see or notice any issues as far as the legs popping off with this one. So this one is definitely a little bit nicer than the first one. So now we move on to our Hideous ZIPPLEBACK. And when it comes to this dragon, I will say instantly one thing they should have done was given it kind of like a wire neck, because having a wire neck would have made the figure a lot more fun and more posable, and I don't feel like it would have been that huge of a deal. I mean, you see companies often do that with like the Hammond collection and stuff, including wires in the tails. I just feel like this figure would have really benefited from a wire in the neck and a wire in the tail, just adding a little bit more posability. Because honestly, when it comes to the posability of this one, there's not that much to it. Well, another thing that really was a bit of a letdown for me that I wasn't expecting is there is no articulated jaw. I really expected there to be on this one. I just assumed that it would have it, but once I picked it up in store, I was very let down to see again that there isn't any sort of an articulated jaw for the figure on either head. Sculpt wise though, it does look pretty good. The detail is a little bit muted, but for the most part I think it looks really quite nice. We could see the nostrils sculpted out. We can also see the teeth coming up from the lower jaw sculpted, and they are painted, so that looks very good. You can also see the horn, kind of a little bit of a bumpy sort of a horn right there. The eyes are painted with an orange, given a black pupil. They have a nice gloss coat, so they shine pretty nicely. You have a green for the primary body color, and then a light tone moving down from the lower jaw that leads down into the neck, but disappears before leading down into the body. As you move up to the top of the head, you can see, again, some more horns here on the back of the head of the dragon. You can also see these very interesting, kind of like spikes moving down along the back, painted out with a reddish tone. And of course we also have the saddle, so we know where we can put our human figures if we want them to ride the dragon. You continue to see again those spikes leading down before they lead back into the body. The skin texture again continues to look fairly decent. I will say there is a super obvious and awkward looking seam, focus camera, moving down through the neck. You can really see it's very obvious, and I get it's an action figure, so there usually are seams, but for some reason that one really stands out to me. Articulation wise in the neck, you can move the neck up and down, and it does have some decent mobility as far as that goes. And now it's stuck. I don't know if we can swivel. Oh yeah, we can definitely swivel the neck. So that gives you a little bit more as far as the posability goes. No left and right really, but you can swivel and go up and down. As you move back into the body, you will notice that there is a speckling included. Kind of looks like a dark blue sort of speckling that is pretty abundant through the figure. But the one thing that I'm not a huge fan of when we lead into the body is the texturing is very washed out. Similar to Toothless. If I remember, Toothless had kind of like washed out detail in the body. Same deal for this one. It also has a very strong gloss gloss coat. But what's weird is when you come up to the top, you can see what the texturing probably should look like, and it looks a lot nicer moving down through the center of the figure. But then moving down here, not only does the detail, again, look severely washed out and muted, it also has a little bit of an awkward, again, like very weird artificial look to it. And of course, it's a figure, again, an action figure. It's not supposed to look completely realistic, but I feel like a lot of the other dragons just looked a little bit better than this one does. As you move down into the legs, though, you can see the musculature is present. Very impressive skin texture once you leave the body and lead into the legs. You can see the elbow right there. The foot sculpt looks pretty good. The nails are sculpted pretty decently, but again, unpainted like most of them have been. You do have leg articulation forward and back. That's about as far forward as it really seems to go. Backward, I don't know how far I could go, maybe even further if we move this leg. But then leading back, again, you can see the musculature of the thigh, the calf muscle, the kneecap, and again, the nice texturing moving down. You've also got the nice looking foot sculpt. Again, the claws sculpted, but unpainted. And then we move back up, and you can see the reddish tone starts to disappear as you lead out into the tail, and then unfortunately, the remainder of these kind of like interesting sort of spikes that it has going on are unpainted. And that's just, in my opinion, another area that is a bit of a letdown for the figure. The tail attached, it was separate in the packaging, but it doesn't actually have any articulation, which is upsetting. And again, the lack of like a wire tail makes it even less posable, but you can also see that it is a little flexible, so you can move it, but it just doesn't actually have like an actual posable wire tail or anything. But moving back, again, the skin texture does look a bit nicer as you lead into the tail, and then you lead out as we finish the tail off with two ends out here, which again are very nicely textured. The underside as well looks okay, and again, until you come back into the body, and that's when, again, the detail becomes a bit more muted. It doesn't look bad. I actually feel like it looks a little nicer on the underside, but still not great. And then moving up into the wings, you can very much so see that sort of speckling that's been applied up here. You can also see the wings are sculpted pretty decently and do also have, again, nicer texturing than we see in the body. As we move up here to the top, you can get a look at the wings from up here as well, which again do look really nice. And they do articulate, of course, which can go up and down pretty nicely, and also can swivel and move a little bit. So you have some fairly decent posability when it comes to the wings of the dragon. Now over here, it's going to pretty much look the same. Again, maybe slightly different as far as the positioning of the legs, but the biggest difference would be the neck over here. You can see the neck of this side is positioned a little bit differently. It kind of leads up and then has a very strong curve as you lead toward the face of the dragon. But again, unfortunately, no actual articulated jaw, no ability to kind of articulate the neck out of this position. It can also move up and down, just like we saw on the other side, though, and of course swivel, but that's really about it. So not really anything too different from this side to the other outside of the positioning of the neck. But that's really about it as far as this one goes. Still pretty cool, and I'm really happy to finally have this dragon, but I kind of expected a little more. As far as a size goes for the dragon, it is pretty big, so it does have that going on for it. For a length, you are looking at about 20 inches or around 51 centimeters, and then for a height, the highest point is definitely this head of the dragon, so you're looking at a little hair over 6 inches or around 15.5 centimeters. And then, for Rough Nut and Tough Nut down here, as we move the camera all over the place trying to get it into position, they are pretty close to the same size. You're looking at about 3.25 inches or around 8 centimeters, roughly for both. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect Day human being next to our set here. And you can see again that it definitely has a pretty good size to it when it comes to a lot of the mainline dragons that we have been reviewing. This is definitely one of the larger figures we've seen. Now, I don't think we need too many dragon comparisons, but we will, of course, bring in a few, as we have Skrill here, who currently has its wing backwards for some reason, next to our Hideous ZIPPLEBACK, and you can very clearly see again that the Hideous ZIPPLEBACK is much larger. And of course, it's the exact same case when we bring in Mr. Bobblehead over here. The Grunkle figure is much, much smaller. And honestly, nothing's going to change even bringing in the Deadly Natter, which is also, again, quite a bit smaller. It's kind of an awkward comparison because the wing of Toothless is so large right now, but you can see once we bring in the Plasma Blast Toothless, that figure is a little bit bigger, so we now finally have a figure again that beats out the Hideous ZIPPLEBACK in size. And then one final comparison, and one comparison that I knew was going to win in the size department. We have the Titan Red Death here next to our Hideous ZIPPLEBACK, which you can very clearly see there's no comparison as far as the size goes here. So this brand new How to Train Your Dragons Hideous ZIPPLEBACK and Rough Nut and Tough Nut figures are pretty cool, but they're not really that great. I would say that this release is actually one of the more disappointing sets that I've reviewed, because the dragon itself I actually had pretty high hopes for. I just felt like it was pretty darn cool, a very neat dragon that I'm definitely a fan of, but actually having it here, it's kind of littered with problems. Again, the lack of posability is a bummer. The lack of an articulated jaw is also a bummer. The fine detail is quite muted through a large portion of the body. There's not really any playability or posability with the tail at all. So again, there's definitely a good bit that could have been improved on this one that they chose to just kind of skip over. I don't know, maybe for saving a few bucks, I'm not too sure, but I really feel like this dragon had some potential to be an excellent release, but does sadly fall short. The sculpt is pretty cool looking, and again, I assume it replicates the way it looks on screen fairly decently, but I haven't really seen the trailer too many times, and I don't remember if they show the dragon in the trailer, but it looks good here outside of the muted detail, but the paint application is also somewhat lackluster on this one. It looks okay as you move back from the head into the body, and the moment you hit the body, I feel like it starts to look a little bit less impressive, and then once you're into the tail, the paintwork's gone, and it's kind of Mattel-like as far as that goes. It has some articulation in the neck, and again at the base of the neck, and also the legs, and as well as the wings, which is okay in some areas, but I just would have appreciated like a little bit more, maybe some articulation in the tail and the jaw and stuff like that. Well, the jaws, because there are two. And then the human figures look pretty good, but they do have some paint mishaps, and also the fact that the leg will not stay on one of them is also a bummer. So overall, I would say this is probably one of the sets I was most hyped for, but ended up being one of the biggest disappointments in the entire line. However, it's still worth adding to your collection, especially if you've been adding the other ones to it. You might want to grab this one again at your local Walmart, because that is exactly where I found mine. So check your Walmart. Hopefully they'll have it, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.